So I actually had gone back in the Torah portion, not for this week, but for the prior week, and I was reading through, and it kind of prompted me, and I went back and I actually went back to the Torah and went through and tried to calculate the dates for the, for the,
feast.
The feast for this particular part of the year.
Yeah.
High holy days.
So I took our calendar that we have. Do you have any of those here, Handy, still?
Oh, the one they gave us?
Yeah.
Yeah, the one you gave us, which is absolutely amazingly wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Where's Glenda? Glenda, are you here? Would you go in my office and get that one off the wall behind my door?
What are we talking about?
A calendar. I'm sorry. You weren't here. Just bring it in here, off the wall. Yes, we do. And that's actually, that one is a sighted moon calendar. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was looking at that one, and then I was looking at also. So as you guys know, we normally, we've been going in. Our family really follows just the regular Hebrew calendar that you would have.
Hillel too.
The Hillel.
The Hillel calendar.
Hillel too. Yeah.
And I just had a question about the dates on there, because when I calculated, I actually came up with, for Yom Teruah, I came up with it starting, I believe, one day prior.
Yes, that's right. That's normally the Hillel too. Not always, but normally, yeah.
Okay, I was just
First sighting.
about it, and the main reason I was curious is because I wanted to put in vacation requests for that quarter, and I never really went and looked. I never went to the Torah, before and tried to go figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out it's not all that. To me, it wasn't all that clear to try to translate it into our calendar, our our English Gregorian calendar, and figure out what the right days should be.
Yes.
But so anyway, I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit about
Absolutely. And I'll let Pat speak to the conjunction part in a second. All right, so and you tell your story briefly. I don't mean to be briefer than me, because everybody can be that, but anyway.
Simple.
Okay.
But it's complex.
Yes. And don't explain where you started and how you got to where you are now. So briefly, that's what I'm saying. Okay. So the answer is, let me first do the introduction.
Maybe 4 scriptures and not 100.
Oh.
Okay. Let me do the introduction to the session. So, shalom everyone. Welcome to the Torah portion Ha'azinu, which is Gibir, translated roughly. We're in the pre-session Hebrew, beginning biblical Hebrew for research purposes, and intermediate biblical Hebrew for research purposes. So the question was about the calendar. So let's address the calendar issue. So basically, I can speak to pretty much any calendar that you have. There's gazillions of them out there. I can speak to the merits of each, which probably most of them have merits, and almost all of them, but not all of them. So, from my perspective. So when I say them, I'm probably talking about maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about maybe 6 or 8 different calendars that I'm aware of. And now it's even more complex than that, because when you talk about calendars, everybody needs to have this first understanding. You're talking about multiple issues. So I know, Nathaniel, you asked the question, so I'll address it this way. You know what a matrix is? That's what you got with calendars. You got your list, going down across or down, whatever you want to do, 8 or 10, or what did they say, 6 or 8 calendars?
Yes.
And then going across, you got variables based on various other things. For example, I don't know if everybody can follow me or not. So, it's a long explanation, but you'll have a full understanding. So if you think of it as a matrix, the calendar issue is a matrix, then you have a better understanding. And like I said, with probably maybe 5 or more of them, there are merits to the reasons and valid reasons why you could address it or understand it that way. Now, 1 or 2, there's not, in my opinion, but maybe we'll point those out. But the point is this. So, and what do I mean by matrix? So if you got all the calendars, say you've got conjunction, usually we'll start with that. Hillel 2. Sighted moon.
I want to write these down. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, what were those again?
Conjunction. Here, I'll go slow. No problem. One slow. So this is what's been. And the thing I'll say at the end of the day is, as long as we don't get sidetracked on this is right and that's not, and all that stuff. I mean, everybody can have their opinion, and that's certainly open. In fact, we addressed the Sukkot issue of the days of the Sukkot by scheduling the way we do, 12 days. 2 days set up, 2 days take down, plus the 8 days in the middle makes 12 days for the staff, and all. Anyway, but when we do that, and because we have 10, 2, and 7 assemblies, we cover, not only do we cover conjunction on the first Tuesday, this will be Tuesday night this year, because we start setting up in the afternoon on Tuesday, officially by our calendar setting and stuff. So we can have our first day assembly after sunset on Tuesday. Okay, that covers conjunction. The next day would be Hillel 2 in this case. And there's a bunch of points to make here, so this will be about a 15-minute explanation. Okay, but it's thorough. Okay, yeah. Sean's already bored right now. Okay, so anyway, and then you got the sighted moon. Okay, so with it, sighted moon. So now there's some now.
I have one other question.
Yes, this isn't the end of the discussion, but anyway, I mean the explanation. And Pat hadn't got to have her chance yet, but she'll get it.
Is one of these tied to the Qumranites? Because I know they were from studying some of the Qumran, one of the biggest issues is they were following a different calendar than they were supposedly.
Than the temple?
Yes. I don't know if it has anything to do with it, or if I guess this has been some.
No, it's just somebody that wants. No. I don't mean it derogatory by anybody. It's because like I said, I can understand why people have every opinion there is. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily agree with all of them, but I have my own opinion. But anyway, the point is, as long as we're not sidetracked by the wrong day and this and that and all that stuff. And everybody can make it, because there is ambiguity. And the ambiguity is not in the scripture. It's just what it doesn't tell you, and we'll talk about that later on. Anyway, the point is that let's see, I lost my train. So conjunction. I don't know if I answered your last question. Yes. Okay, so conjunction is the time when the moon is so close or overlapping over the sun. You'd have a total eclipse if that case, but at the new moon, or it's so close. Usually it's just close proximity, so it's dark. There's no the reflection because of the way where you can't see the reflection if you're on the wrong side of the moon. We're on the wrong side of the moon on the new moon to see a reflection, because you have to be on this side where the sun is. So you got the sun. Everybody follows? Sun here, moon here, we're here. And conjunction is usually like right here. This is the moon. This is the moon. This is the sun. Usually the moon. I should do it the other way, shouldn't I? Whatever. It's kind of like, all right, so the sliver, that's what I'm trying to project. All right, so anyway, this is the sun. So the proximity as they go, the orbit that the Earth rotates and the moon revolves around the Earth, the proximity and location from our perspective on Earth is like this, and Nathaniel could explain this much better than I. But anyway, the point is, as it goes around, when you get conjunction, you're right here. This is this location. This is a big eclipse, but right here, and I'm talking about at sunset. Okay, so this is dark. You can't see any light reflection. This is bright, so you can't really see with the naked eye.
Yes.
Okay, and so when you get to the next night. Comes around, and I was telling Sean, by the way, you got to see the first sliver on the 7th month, just the other day. So it comes around, then the moon is here in relation to the sun. Okay, and that's usually on very rare occasions you can see it, but depends on the percent of I forget what anyway. There's a at 2%, you probably 1% you cannot see. 1% of reflection on the sun, of the moon, the white sliver. Okay, when it's 1%, you still can't see it. 2%, you still can't see it. 2.8 or 9 to 3 or 4, you can start seeing it. If you have a perfectly clear day, no haze, no clouds, So usually it's like the second or third night after conjunction. By the way, conjunction is only a 3-minute period. Conjunction is only 3 minutes long. Okay. Now the next thing you got to address is this is the matrix. I'll put this on the board in a second here. The conjunction. Okay. So when are you sighting the moon? When do you consider the conjunction as starting? The 3-minute window, is that Israel time, or is that local time?
I see.
So where you are. So that varies the day. So that's one of the other variable factors across the top of it. So anyway, so the next night, so the first night you're probably here. Second night, coming down, you're probably about here. Probably still can't see it. Usually it's the second night if it's farther away, or the third night sometimes, and it's a delay when there's enough proximity. Now this doesn't even consider cloud cover. Okay, so we're all talking about when does this begin. So this is how it works. It goes around this, and it comes back to the next night, and then to here. So this was about here the night Sean thought it was 4% illumination. Okay, so it was probably about that distance, and then the sun went down, and you can see it really well. So, and we got there's the pictures. So, and then when you get to a full moon, what you have at sunset here, you have the full moon rising here. Just a few minutes later. So the way this works, and I didn't tell Sean the other night, but I'll tell you this, a little bit of information, Sean, is that as it goes across you can tell just by looking at sunset, you don't even need a paper calendar. You can tell where it is in the sky relation to tell what time of the lunar month you're in. You could say the day of the month.
I just say the hour.
You can say the day of the month just by its sunset. Where's the location of the moon? Okay, or you say you can't see it because it's down here at sunset, but it comes up a little bit. How late into the evening it comes up? There you go. So you wouldn't even need a paper calendar. Now, because we do Gregorian calendar, we're solar calendar only on Gregorian. You don't have that capability. All right. So now I'm yelling here. Huh? I'm not using the microphone while I'm using the example as the moon. All right. So this is a conjunction calendar. But is it conjunction in Israel or whenever it's here, or we wait till it gets here, or if the conjunction happens overhead and then say Houston, but it doesn't happen to Israel tomorrow night, what starts the conjunction day?
I see.
You see where that's as well as the sighted day. But not on Hillel 2, and we'll talk about that one in a minute. All right. So the third night, fourth night, it goes around. Fifth night, you're getting farther and farther away, so you have this. So you can imagine going back around the other way. So when the moon is the anyway, enough said. You get the idea.
Yes.
All right, now let's talk about matrix. So when you have sighting, you're going on sighting, or when you're going on conjunction, you've got to ask the question, is it at the point where it is, the conjunction happens, is if it's overhead, or if it's local time, or Jerusalem time on conjunction, as well as sighted, okay, to determine when it is. Hillel 2 is different. Hillel 2 is called and by the way, even though I say we are observing for assembly days, the Hillel 2, it's not really Hillel 2. It's just closest to the Hillel 2. Because Hillel 2 adds 2 days for Rosh Hashanah, but we just observe Yom Teruah because that's all that's told about in the scriptures. I understand why they observe Rosh Hashanah. I understand why it's different if you're living in the land or if you're living outside the land, in the diaspora. Okay? Those are all issues to be addressed with the calendar, with conjunction, and with sighted. But projected Hillel 2 pure calendar by itself is not affected by conjunction, location, or sighting, or in the land or not in the land. Well, I think they tell everybody to delay things today if you're not living in the land. If you're in the diaspora, there's sometimes you'll see candle lighting in Israel time, candle lighting in the diaspora.
Yes.
Because you're having to switch to a local time. So those kinds of things.
That's us.
Oh, okay.
Or not.
Dispersion, yeah. Exiled from the land. If you're not living in the land.
Or phrase, yeah.
Yes, diaspora.
I would just
Diaspora.
say others.
Diaspora, some people say. Diaspora is all through the letters, the Galatians and the Peter and all those. All those.
Well, they should have just said others. What do you call that?
Well, they were dispersed from land. That's what it's referring to, when they were dispersed in Roman rule as the temple was destroyed. All right, so you starting to see some more variables here, and I'll put those up on the board in a minute. So conjunction, Hillel 2, and side moon, 3 main ones. And we have those covered on Sukkot every time that we're responsible for. So the conjunction people will come early and leave early, and the sighted moon would come late and leave late. So, yeah. So that being said, we did not pick the dates for the impressive seat amphitheater. The other congregation did. They were only doing 3 or 4 or 5 days, and then letting people go back to work, and then trying to do an assembly. By the way, we have one group, one congregation here in Houston, that is assembling for about 4 or 5 days, and then they're breaking in the middle before the Shabbat begins, High Shabbat, and going home because they were coming from all over the country, and they're going to do a conference call assembly over the phone for those people that are flying in from out of state, and probably international even. So that's just insight for you. So, all right, because it is simple on the 8th day and the 1st day. All right, so now there are other calendars. So let's speak briefly to them. So let me tell my story. That's a good point, and then we'll segue into that. Is that I started out, doing a Gregorian calendar, Christmas, Easter, all that fun stuff, right? The Bible? Yeah. No, it's not the Bible. So we won't go into all that stuff. That's another day, another teaching. But I started out with L2 because get count. It's easy. You can get it. It's right there. You just look on the paper. Yeah, it's today or it's not today. So there's merits for that as well. The L2 was effectively started because of the diaspora, or just shortly before or after the diaspora, just shortly after. Okay, so I think it was 200 AD or something. Has reference to Hillel, but he did not make it directly. It was one of his great-grandson or something suggested it, and then they had to modify it, so they called it Hillel 2. But it is a projected calendar, so that's why it's fixed. They do calculations, and then it's a projected sighted is what Hillel 2 is. They're projecting when they think the sighted. Sometimes it's right. Most of the time it's probably not more than that, but it's slightly off. So, and then you don't allow for cloud cover either on Hillel 2. So local sighting, Jerusalem sighting, cloud cover, none of that matters on Hillel 2. It's a fixed calendar, just by putting numbers into a calculation and putting the date out. So that's why they have many years in advance. Okay. Now my story is, so I started out on Hillel 2 because that's all I knew. Everybody starts out on Hillel 2 when they first come in this walk, just about, unless they have somebody who's teaching them otherwise. And then I said, oh, well, that's not it. It's really sighted. You should go to sighted. So I went to sighted. Okay. A few years later, and I was teaching these from the beginning, So I'm not saying the day one I woke to everybody goes, oh, I got to do the Hillel 2. No, it was, as we went down along. I didn't know there was anything. So, but then I knew. Now I was convinced by the sighted, and then I went to conjunction. I did. I went to conjunction next. So I was on the conjunction calendar for several years, and because why? Why conjunction? I don't want to steal anything from that, but conjunction is because whenever you get to the first day, it's always the dark of the moon. When you get to the 15th day, exactly on the 15th day, it's the full moon. So perfect for Sukkot. You know exactly when it is. When it's the full moon. Catch is, too, that on conjunction, and you do that in assignment, then you've learned, oh, well, your eye can't actually determine that it looks like the full moon lasts for 3 or 4 days. Which is not really the case, but it appears from the eye unless you're really good, keen eyesight and paying close attention. So there is only one really period of time when it's actually full. So anyway, and then I got into the sighted, and then so I said, so I went from Hillel 2 to sighted, then to conjunction, and then back to Hillel 2 just for general assemblies. And then I learned to do the Sukkot this way. Sukkot man said this is the only way to do Sukkot, cover all 3 bases. So, and everybody's happy. Everybody gets to observe them. They have their assembly first day and 8th day on the day, and all that kind of stuff. And you just don't have to go over and say, you did it wrong, Nathaniel. So I'm not going to let Pat get up on the table. I know she wants to, and shout over the microphone into your face, say, conjunction. Anyway, so, no, conjunction.
I was in the restroom when you were talking.
The dark of the moon. You can't see the moon. It's too close.
When it's at 0%?
Whenever the sun is here and the moon is too close to proximity at the dark, there's no reflecting coming off, no white of the moon, and it's too close to the sun to even see it, especially when it's dark. So until it gets farther away, still can't see it. Probably about here, you can probably see it.
See
Yeah, there's a percent of illumination. It's usually like 2.8 to 3 or 4 before you can actually see it. Percent of illumination.
I was
Okay.
following the app.
By the way, if anybody wants websites, and Nathaniel might like this, email me or something. I'll send you links.
Okay.
You can do it now if you want. That will give you the percent of illumination, any minute, day, hour, time, at the exact time.
App I have.
And I also can give you, Nathaniel may already have this simulation software if you want to do the moons, the eclipses, and the stars and the gazing. And I do know that even NASA doesn't have it all figured out, because those simulation softwares, 40,000 years or 10, even a year into the future, they make updates. And this is why some people say, "Oh, just do what the Bible says." But then, if the Bible and what in reality doesn't line up, something you're missing there. So the same way with NASA, and I compliment NASA and all the people that do the simulation software, JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratories, and all that stuff, is that they do their calculations and they say, "This is it." But then it's always good to say, "Well, did it or not?" No, we have to tweak it. It's fractional, minor stuff most of the time, but. Okay, so they do tweak it, and so that is why I say Yah has the calendar figured out. Okay, there you go. All right, so better than NASA. All right, so we appreciate NASA. So that's what I went. Hillel 2, then I went to conjunction. To decided, and then to conjunction, then back to Hillel 2. Today, I just say don't get caught up or hung up on doing it this way and everybody else do it your way. Just be reflective, because there are valid reasons for all the reasons why. Now, some ones that I haven't mentioned is Enoch calendar. I don't really have a problem with the Enoch calendar, but Enoch calendar is the 364-day calendar, effectively, and it's just a count throughout the year, and you go all the way around. You got 30 days, and then 31, which ends the quarter. 30 days, and 31 ends the quarter, and 33. It's 4 times in the year. But the problem is, it's 364-day year, and we know we're on a solar. And actually, the biblical calendar is a lunar solar /solar year. Yes. Okay, so you have to take into consideration both. Gregorian calendar only does solar, and some of the Islamic calendars, I guess, we probably just do lunar or something like that. Anyway, whatever the calendars are. Anyway, all of them out there. But I'm not referring to those calendars. I'm referring to Enoch calendar. Now, Enoch calendar is perfect. It's simple. Everything's fixed, years in advance and all this stuff. But it does not take into consideration the 364 days.
Says, Brett's got one of the two, says discarded.
Actually, what people... Discarded. Okay. Some people discredit it, and I don't really discredit it. I probably think it probably was observational, but that means at the time that it was done and everything, whenever that was, or if we have the original Enoch writings and stuff. I'm not going to say. I have no. But here's the point, the valid points. If Dean was here, he would address these issues, and that is one. That Enoch calendar is simple. You don't have to be doing mathematical calculations. It's just a simple addition and all this. The other thing is, the Enoch calendar was probably most likely what the solar system was doing back before the fall, the earthquake, the Noah's flood, or somewhere back in the day. Okay, during Enoch's time. Okay, which was the first generations of what's the 7th generation or. Yeah, 7th generation from Hanok is the Hebrew for Enoch. English is Enoch. I don't know how they got Enoch out of Hanok. All right. Anyway, so that's the way it was probably before the separation of the plates and the what do you call it? What's it called when the South America and Africa split? What's its term? Is that it? I'm not sure what it is. But anyway, you know what I'm talking about. When the continents split apart instead of being all one little landmass. Okay? That's probably likely the time when the things changed. Because it's very clearly to me, studying the little bit that I do know, that it most likely did happen in the past. All right, so whether it was during the flood or not, we don't know, but it's very likely it could have been. So where would I get to? So at this point, what we...
I'm going to put it up to the table.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else we need to cover. Oh, so Enoch calendar, so that would be a reason. That's probably when it happened, and whenever that shift went from 364 day to possibly a 365 day, 0.4 or 3, whatever. That's when that changed, and so it's not accurate today when you compare what Scripture versus what you see in out there in the real world. So there was something we don't understand, whether it was Planet 7X or Nibiru or whatever. Anyway, whatever the explanations are, it's not what we see today. But people are talking about whenever the earthquake happens, the great earthquake that divides Mount Zion, or the Mount of Olives splits in north to the south, that everything could revert back to 364, perfection by Yah. And so that's where Enoch's calendar is coming from. But I recognize today, I don't know if everybody admits it, the Enoch people, but that it's not accurate for real world conditions unless you make adjustments to the calendar, which they say we don't have to make adjustments, but yet. Anyway, enough said. All right, so there's the validity to that. Then let's talk about one that doesn't. Lunar Sabbath. Lunar Sabbatarians. I'm sorry, I don't agree with them, and I don't think they have merit. They have their reasons they believe what they do, but I do not. So who does not? Right, show of hands, please, everybody. Who does not know what Lunar Sabbaths or Lunar Sabbatarians are?
I have never heard of them.
Never heard of it.
No, anybody here at all? Maybe we should do it that way. Anybody know what Lunar Sabbaths are? Okay. Yes, but it's worse than that. So they take the 28 days lunar cycle, and they divide it up, and so one week from one Sabbath to the other. So the Sabbath is.
They say that the Sabbath is not the 7th day.
Yeah, it's the first day, the 8th day, and no matter what the moon is doing, it's a certain number of days or something. You divide it up. So 1 week might be 8 days long or something, and so you have the Shabbat on there. Now, I'm not trying to put down with people or discredit them or anything. I'm just saying I don't agree and don't see it. And so, by the way, if you teach that, you probably don't want to listen to our website. So anyway, all right, there you go.
Somebody trying to follow that. I didn't know that's what it was based on.
Gosh, it's so wacky.
Yeah, and so anyways, but that's what it is. So I don't give credence to that. I mean, I know the reasons, a lot of them, because I've got teachings on this, all this stuff, and so you guys are getting the short version today, by the way. So the presentation, yes.
No, you wouldn't get him for Shabbat. Anybody who follows that, you've never encountered any.
Oh yeah.
Person. You have?
Not here, but yeah, in other congregations, yeah.
Oh.
Well, absolutely, and of course with MCC, I'll get what do we do about there we go. So enough said. MCC question from the congregational hosts or deacons or shamashim. All right, so another thing to mention that in this mix of matrix is that you get into the questions of here's the real question. We probably wouldn't be having this discussion about the 3 main calendars even if it were not for enough precision and explanation as to the exact moment the month starts, and even just as important, the year starts.
Yes, that's right.
If we had that, it's not really ambiguous in the Scripture. It's just not, everybody knew, supposedly. And then later on, we started getting the other calendars, and you get the Essene calendar versus the temple calendar and stuff like that. So that's where you get into the things. Then we had the diaspora, and then you couldn't only do local sighting. I mean, when they were doing local sighting, they still had everybody around the world because they send out signal fires and going clear into Iraq, Persia, Babylon, or whatever. And all around the world, they would send out the signal fires, and they'd travel across the world that they sighted the moon. So that being the case, so there are reasons for everything, and there are valid reasons and things to consider. But so 4 assembly days, just so you guys generally know, we're doing on a Hillel 2, modified Hillel 2. I mean, okay. So for example, we don't call. All right. So let's just talk about something else too. This is important too in the consideration. Like for example, one another difference between Hillel 2 and what we do observe is we don't call Passover 8 days long. Passover is a 1-day period, really 24-hour. It's really an afternoon as a period of time on that particular 24-hour period when the sun, what's the term used, as the sun starts to descend in the sky. So it's past noon, so like 2, 3 in the afternoon kind of thing when it begins. When significantly between the evenings, that's the Hebrew term. The English version of the Hebrew meaning, between the evenings. So we've got a whole teaching on that. It's probably on the website even already. So you guys look for that. Look at the graphics, the whiteboard pictures, and find the ones talking about between the evenings or when that day is on Passover. It's probably around the Passover time, one of those Torah portions. Cool. Pat was in that discussion, so I know she remembers that very well. So we had that long that day, was the between the evenings. If you want to address that too, whenever you're talking about conjunction, that's fine. But so there are other things in consideration even than that. So being in the land or not in the land, or sighted, local sighting or Jerusalem sighting, and there's also considerations of what the calendar was like. Enoch probably was like that then, but it's not right now. But it may be in the future. Very likely could be. There's also considerations of
this thing on this discussion.
I'm going to draw a matrix on the whiteboard in a second, so go ahead.
One other thing that I wondered is that on, like, if you pull like a Jewish calendar, common Jewish calendar that you'd see, they will not have the Shemini Atzeret or Atzeret on as a Shabbat necessarily. So that was kind of strange, because when I actually read the Torah, it says that is supposed, the 8th day is supposed
Absolutely.
to be a Shabbat.
Yep.
So I was wondering if anybody could say, how is it that that traditionally that's not
I can.
that's not being actually kept as a Shabbat as it's written.
What we're getting into some language and understandings. It's not really ambiguity in this case. It's what's not said.
Okay.
Once again,
Yes.
like the month, the beginning, and the year beginning. That is and where the confusion gets in. It wasn't called Shemini Atzeret per se. They did say, but that's Hebrew for 8th day celebration. Shemini is 8th, and Atzeret is celebration, effectively into English from Hebrew. So Shemini Atzeret. But there's also this thing called Hoshana Rabbah. And so all the Christians go, oh yeah, the last great day of the assembly. They read in English, and oh, it's the 8th day, so that's Hoshana Rabbah. Well, not in most of the Jewish world, but some of the Jewish world it is. So there's the confusion, because it doesn't say observe Hoshana Rabbah. What it says in the scripture, in fact, we're going to read Yom Kippur stuff here in a little bit, but when we get to the main service. If we ever do. No, this is good. I think we were actually doing the teaching instead of just sharing our hurricane stories. So that's what we did last week, guys. All right. So so there's the confusion. It doesn't use the term Hoshana Rabbah, but it does refer to the last great day, sort of in the Brit Hadashah, not in the Torah directly, but it's implied, because what it says in the Torah says, live in Sukkot or Sukkot, temporary dwellings, for 7 days.
Right.
The first day is High Shabbat. This is Shabbat. We add High Shabbat because it's not on the weekend. And that's all that really the term means. Some people consider High Sabbaths more important than other Sabbaths, regular Sabbaths, and some people vice versa, diminish the. Judah tends to say the High Sabbath is not as important as the weekly Sabbath. So even though they call it the High Shabbat, in English you think high is better and regular is, but they're the other way around in Hebrew, in Judah. But there are some, so the confusion comes to your 7 days, your Sukkot, okay? Cool, you got it covered. But then he adds, and on the 8th day, it's a Shabbat. And having an assembly, we can talk about Mikra Kodesh, holy rehearsal, effectively, in Hebrew, on the first day and the 8th day as well. So there's where it gets. So when you get to the 7th day, if you look at the John chapter, is it 7 or 10? 7, I think it is. John 7. You'll see Yeshua observing the Hoshana Rabbah, because he stands up on the last great day of the feast. I quote the Greek. And what is that? Shemini Atzeret or Hoshana Rabbah? That's a trick question, guys. Anybody have an answer? You don't have to be. You have to agree with me, for sure, but you don't have to be right with what I think. So, anybody have an opinion? Nathaniel.
By the same?
Huh?
By the same, the 8th day.
As the Hoshana Rabbah. Okay, that's the typical early Messianic and maybe a Messianic Jewish, just Messianic Hebraic roots understanding is the last great day. Oh, he's talking about the 8th day. But not in most of Judaism. Some of the Judaism, that's where I'm telling you where you're getting the conflicting calendars on Hillel too, is because most of Judaism, I don't know what percent, maybe 80, 90%, will observe Hoshana Rabbah on the 7th day, the last great day of Sukkot.
Right.
And the 8th day celebration, the High Shabbat, is Shemini Atzeret, is a separate day, kind of after the fact. It's like a bonus day. That also applies on the dedication Hanukkah, and you get Hanukkah story in the Brit Hadashah as well. I think it's John 10 or something, whatever, anywhere, wherever it is, and there's 7:10, something like that. So that's where you get the references, and that's where you get some distinction that the Torah doesn't specify, but yet the Greek uses these terms which had come along by that time. So that's where the confusion gets. So I did once again. I said, "Oh, somebody said." I said, "Well, what it is it the weekly Shabbat, or is this during the week?" And we're talking about counting the Omer, for example. That's another thing, you get in those. And that is ambiguity. So much ambiguity that when Joshua came out of the land, it looks like he's doing it one way, versus whenever the Moshe gave the instruction, it looked like it's possibly another way. Okay, but in the Christian world, Messianic Hebraic roots, they read it for the first time. You read the scripture that says, "You count on the morrow after the Sabbath." Okay, so I remember this specifically. I asked the congregational leader, and so he said, "What does it say?" And I said, "The morrow after the Sabbath." Okay, so he says, "So what is the Sabbath to you? Are you talking about the High Shabbat in the middle of the week? Or are you talking about because it wasn't termed difference distinction then between Shabbat and High Shabbat, or the weekly Sabbath?" I said, "The weekly Sabbath." Well, I didn't realize there was a middle of the week Sabbath. Okay. So this is early on. So I said, okay, then you count it this way then. So, and Tony Robinson does an excellent teaching on demand on HRN, and you're going to see that. So we're getting all kinds of. So there's another consideration, a little bit of distinction. Judah always does the High Shabbat, the first day of unleavened bread, starts to count. Following that, the day following that, so it's usually in the middle of the week. Occasionally, every 7 years or something like that, it's on the weekend. So there are both ways of Messianic, so you're counting over. But we're not going to tell you, you can't come here if you think it's, you count on the weekly Shabbat, or if you count on the High Shabbat, you're not doing like us. No, so don't get hung up on that, you guys. So that is ambiguity in Scripture. We don't know if when Passover came after they crossed the Jordan and they celebrated the feast of the land, the manna ceased. That's the reference. You can look that up. You're going to find that there's an ambiguity there, so that you do not know if they started on the. It seems to imply that they started it on the day after the first day of unleavened bread, rather than the weekly Shabbat. But if you read in the other, then you get so there's some ambiguity also. And everybody can make their case, and both sides have valid cases. But there is ambiguity there, okay, between Torah and Joshua. All right.
That's very helpful.
So that's a little bit another difference, Hillel 2 versus the factors to consideration again. Passover is not 8 days long per se, even though, but then there's differences in terms. Sabbaton in Greek versus Shabbat, and by the way, Sabbath. The English word Sabbath is a made-up word. You got that, John? Yeah. Yeah, it is.
Translation of a word.
Well,
doesn't.
I actually have a graphic on one of these laminated sheets somewhere. Glenda, would you look for me? That actually says all the different languages. I think it's in here. If it's not in there, it's in my file somewhere else. You're looking for a chart that has a list of Sabbath in every language around the world. Shabbat in every language around the world. So there are different ways for it. This was another reason I don't get hung up on the pronunciation of the name. So when she finds that, we'll talk about that.
Like Yeshua translating, you don't have all of the elements in the way it's translated. It's not negated. It's not the same as.
Yeah. So is everybody exhausted now? And I haven't even drawn my chart. Yes. Oh, yeah, it's just thank you. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Glenda. You can put those back up there under the Kleenex and stuff. All right, so this is a graphic where Irene can see too. When is the Sabbath? Let me do this so you just see the list. And what that is, the language on the left, the Saturday is called this in that language. And then the meaning is the Sabbath or the rest, because that's our English word. But it's really Shabbat or rest. By the way, the word for rest is it Noah in Hebrew? Or is that comfort? Or is that the same thing? Anyway, all right. So, yeah, it says Sabbath on here, but it's really Shabbat. So, it should be Shabbat in every language, but it isn't. So, in Indonesian, I'm reading on the list here. I've got to put my glasses on. So, you see how many languages, and this is the way they pronounce the different pronunciations of Shabbat throughout the world, which they refer to as Sabbath, which is a made-up word. So, Indonesian is Sabtu, Bosnian is Subota, Armenian is Shabbat, Ukrainian is Subota, Somali is Sabti, Latin is Sabbatum, Greek would, well, one version of it in Greek would be the Shabbaton. Spanish is Sabado. By the way, these are all names for Saturday, but do you not see that where they get the name for Saturday? It's not Saturn Worship Day like we have in the Gregorian calendar. It's a derivative version, a different kind of pronunciation for Shabbat. Shabbat. Okay, so Russian is Subota. Don't try to read the Russian while you're saying what it is in English. Gregorian is Sabati. Arabic is Sabbat. Czech's language is Sobota. Greek is Savato. Italian is Sabato. Romanian is Sambata. And Bulgarian is Saboto. In over 100 languages, the day we call Saturday has a name so close to Shabbat and means rest. This and other evidence gives overwhelming proof when the true seventh day Shabbat is. It says Sabbath on it, but I'm being more accurate than this. So, bye.